light a man over land soaring. Life below, could he know he's flying over Mallory? Natural high makes him sigh to know that he's so free, and he's smiling down at me. Over mountains, naturally, you watch the birds without a word, and you wonder, with such a load, have a hold, amaze you, sit and wonder. You wait for winds to give an assured and hopeful kind of a sign, sailing to the heavens of your mind. But it's flying naturally, again, over oceans naturally. But he never knew he'd be in his blue. One with broken wings has gone forever. He's left the gold for your soul that you should remember. The ultimate that he earned didn't take too long. The limits that he reached are dead and gone. Boys flying naturally, again, up a mountain naturally.
Our next presentation shortly. Please find your seats, and our next presentation will start in a few minutes. Thank you.
Oh, you say you're mine, and I believe you every single time, even though they say you're not my kind. I just can't believe.
Every moment of every mission ManTech is advancing, continuously fueling our clients' ability to navigate unfamiliar territory and tackle the most complex challenges. Our expertise is deep, our commitment unwavering. And because there are always new threats on the horizon, our unrelenting drive for efficiency, modernization, and quality is a vital component of mission success. With exceptional expertise in emerging technologies, cyber superiority, data and AI, digital transformation, and intelligent engineering, ManTech delivers proven solutions. By bringing digital to the mission, we transform data into action and achieve extraordinary results. For defense, for intelligence, and across federal civilian agencies, ManTech is the essential partner for supporting and safeguarding the nation's interests. The partner for securing the future. At ManTech, we are always advancing.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our next keynote presentation. I am Commander Nathan Rao of U.S. Pacific Fleet, and I'll be your MC for the rest of today's events. And before we begin, I ask that you would silence your electronic devices at this time. With this morning's supporting sponsor, ManTech, represented by Mr. David Yost, Vice President, Division Manager, Marine Corps and National Security Division, ManTech International Defense Sector, please come on stage.
Well, after that awesome video, I don't need to tell you anything about ManTech. That was pretty impressive. Welcome, everybody, to the keynote session, Day 1, TechNet Indo-Pacom 2025. ManTech is a proud supporting partner of TechNet Indo-Pacom. We're excited to be out here to talk about the mission, not only Indo-Pacom's mission, but every single individual component and command out here. And we're excited for the conversations that we're going to have, talking about contested operations, contested logistics, contested comms, as General Smith probably attests to. We used to call that war. Being out here with a warfighting focused combatant command, I can't think of a better way to spend a couple of days. Pleased to welcome you to the session on behalf of AFCEA International and AFCEA Hawaii. And if you're looking for ManTech, we're right over there in the meeting rooms, but I'd like to take the opportunity to invite everybody here to our social tonight at 1930 at the Outrigger. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. It is now my pleasure to welcome the Commander of Special Operations Command Pacific, Major General Jeffrey VanAntwerp, a special operations leader who has served across the Indo-Pacific and around the world. Major General VanAntwerp's previous assignments include U.S. Army Pacific Operations Officer and the Deputy Commanding General for Operations at the 25th Infantry Division. He's also a husband, father of 7, and an avid surfer. We're honored to have him with us today.
Thank you. All right, avid surfer says nothing about the quality of my surfing, though. So if you see me in the lineup, lower your expectations. Yeah, so I am a father of 7. I told my wife this morning, I said, hey, I'm going to speak today at this event. She always kind of asked, what do you got going on? I'm going to speak at this technology summit thing down at the convention center. And she was like, why? Why are they having you come speak at the tech center? And a lot of my buddies I was just talking to, they would attest to this. I'm maybe not the most technologically advanced guy. So I have done a little studying over the past week or so. I looked at, I was like, what is the most difficult sort of technology or area of technology that people seem to be really struggling with? I found that to be, at least based on a Google search, to be quantum computing. And so I aimed to, in a week's time, make myself an expert in quantum computing so I could come up here and impress you all with my knowledge. I failed. In fact, I found that many of the at least people who are positioning themselves as experts on the internet and quantum computing, I also detected that many of them do not know what they are talking about. I was talking with a buddy of mine before here, we were classmates at West Point, and when we were freshmen, they brought us in one Sunday evening, more just to haze us, to kind of torture us than to actually teach us something. And the topic they had for us was chaos theory, and it was a 1-hour lecture on the Mandelbrot set. If any of you ever heard of this, you probably have not. And fractal rabbits, and it basically became a punchline for the next 4 years. I find quantum computing to be about as confusing as the Mandelbrot set. But I have sort of familiarized myself with some of the terms like superposition and entanglement, and so I will attempt to weave those into this remarks here, and I will probably do a poor job of it. So I'm Special Operations Commander in Pacific now. I spent many years in first SFOD, and then prior to that, an infantry officer, where I served in Hawaii for a period, and then I went to Fort Lewis, where I served in 25th Infantry Division up there and deployed for the first time to Iraq. And probably the first time I came to probably grips with, I'd say, I would call it somewhat advanced technology on the battlefield, where how well I did at my job really depended upon my ability to apply a technology that I had very little understanding of, was in about 2005. And it was sort of at the beginnings of where we were targeting people based on their cell phones, in really GSM targeting, and I knew very little about it. And fortunately at the time, we were pretty stupid about the way we went about it, probably burning a lot of TTPs and tactics, but the enemy was still pretty stupid too, and was operating kind of in the clear without a lot of TTPs, and so we were able to be somewhat successful. Years later, when I moved over to the unit, and I see some guys out here like Rob Christian, who I served with there, one of the first things that they did for new troop commanders was we got a course on GSM theory. And it seemed a little weird at the time, as we were, we'd done a lot of CQB, a lot of the stuff, it basically looked like a bunch of CrossFit champions out there, doing stuff in a shoot house. But what I found that as a troop commander, understanding this thing, GSM theory, how to target people, understanding the construct of how that architecture works. Towers, panels, timing advances, understanding how that technology is affected by the terrain. One of my first deployments, I went to Baghdad, where we were doing a combination of a bunch of different ints, but certainly SIGINT was a big part of it. And there's nothing more uncomfortable than being out in the middle of the darkness in downtown Baghdad with 20 operators who are eager to find the bad guy and get to target. And you, the troop commander who's done the analysis with your intel analysts, who aren't out there with you now, they're back in the JOC, and you're out alone having to own the how are we going to find this guy. And so I really went to school on the technology. And it was during that time that I really started to realize the special combination of not just the technology, it was very important, understanding how it worked, but how to apply that technology in the context of the operational environment, and how to apply that technology in combination with multiple other both technologies and tactics and TTPs. Obviously, we weren't completely dependent upon SIGINT. We're doing a lot of pattern-of-life development. So we're doing a lot of IMINT, we're doing a lot of HUMINT, we're doing a lot of partner INT. The ability to bring those things together and to make the best of all of them was what really made it special. And I believe that to be true today, too. I don't believe there are a lot of just kind of standalone, silver bullet technologies. I'll talk a little bit about some of sort of my thoughts about it. Probably the other, I'd say another significant event where I got a real appreciation for how technology can be enhancing was several years ago when I was working with a partner, the Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria, who were, I would say on the whole, not technologically advanced. It's militia who we are enabling, but their ability to leverage, I'd say, existing technologies. I would use an example like the bulldozer. The bulldozer, when you're going into an urban environment that's saturated with IEDs, particularly houseborne IEDs that are gonna kill you, a lot of them set like pretty complex, like on an IR sort of laser trigger that's gonna wait till the 6th or 7th guy goes through before they blow the IEDs in the house to kind of create mass casualty situations. Those guys figured out pretty fast how to apply what aren't advanced technologies, but existing things that they had at their disposal to their advantage. The bulldozer became a pacing item. You know, the bulldozer leading the FLOT and the guys who drove the bulldozers, those were some courageous dudes. You know, at the end of the day, if they had survived, they'd open the bulldozer door and probably about 100 cigarettes would fall out of it, and that guy would come out, and certainly with some pretty severe TBI, but he was a hero on the battlefield. Another one that I saw, which is probably not technology at all, was when they started to run into an area where they had a lot of these house-borne IEDs with these IR triggers, they started to herd sheep in front of them. And they would herd sheep into the neighborhood, and they just let the sheep wander into the houses, and you lost some sheep there, but you saved a lot of human beings. So as I looked at these guys, and see, we're here with all our, the US, with all our advanced technology, really back behind the last cover concealed, enabling these partners, and we're applying our technology, and at the same time, they're using whatever they have available with a deep understanding of the operational environment, because they've got the tactical imperative of surviving, and they're applying both our high tech and then their low tech to come up with really innovative solutions. And I think that really is, for us, as I look at kind of SOCPAC and what we can help provide to the Joint Force, I think that there's some special sauce in there that's kind of key to our way ahead. So some kind of, I wouldn't call these fundamental thoughts on technology, but a couple of the things that I think about. The first, many of you are aware we have what's called the 5 soft truths. The first truth is the most important. It's that humans are more important than hardware. I firmly believe that. However, I had an opportunity several weeks ago, and have had the opportunity over the past couple years, but several weeks ago I was talking with the Ukrainian SOF commander at a SOF forum in Japan, which it was great. He came out and he gave an awesome presentation. And we were talking a little bit about this first soft truth, and how our way of war is that we count on having better people, specifically in SOF, better people that are going to enable us to win. And one of his comments is like, what do you do when those better people are dead? And he kind of talked through the heavy attrition that they've had. And so it got me thinking, like, one, you've got to find a way to preserve your better people or to generate people more quickly, and that's a big challenge for SOF. And one of the other soft truths is SOF cannot be generated at a time of need. And so it really got me thinking about how do we intend to use technologies to really increase survivability in order to increase lethality. But that is one truth, and I definitely believe in it, that it's the human being that incorporates the technology that remains super important. We've got to have those talented people. The second is that there are very few standalone silver bullet technologies. There are, I think one of the things that we frequently see is, when we talk to a technology vendor, there's a desire to sometimes try to vertically integrate a technology. You want to solve like the robot with the autonomy software, with the network, in sort of a silver bullet chain. I think what we found in watching many of our partners is that this ability to integrate multiple systems, disparate systems, with more open architecture that eventually is going to win. If you have sort of that single standalone technology, just because of the adaptation cycle, it's likely to be cracked, hacked, and eventually overcome. And now you're going to be forced to diversify. Kind of look at a little bit, to use an analogy for the Karate Kid fans. Daniel LaRusso had the kind of the crane kick. And Mr. Miyagi told him, if done right, no can defense. And it worked in Karate Kid 1, but then in Karate Kid 2, he goes to Okinawa to people who are like more familiar with the operational environment and been around this a bit, and the karate, the crane kick, it did not work. It did not work for Daniel LaRusso. He eventually had to go to the spinning drum, sideways thing. That's innovation by Daniel LaRusso there. That's probably one to put in your notes, Rob Christian. The other part is one thing I'd kind of say is one of the things that Admiral Paparo frequently talks about, if you've heard him talk about unmanned systems in particular, is kind of this cost curve. And I believe this to be kind of foundational to our approach. And as we look at what we want to do out here in SOCPAC is, we want to obviously protect our human beings. We've got to do it in a way that allows for quick adaptation, and we've got to do it in a way that is fiscally responsible. And the way Admiral Paparo talks about this kind of cost curve, particularly with unmanned systems, is that you've got, if you imagine like a diagram where on one side you have attritability and another side you have survivability, and you've got cost and then kind of level of technology. You know, we either have to have systems that are highly survivable if they are highly costly, and you need to have some of that, or low cost, attritable, and if we get caught in the middle, which is where we often find ourselves, that's kind of the no man's land. You know, that is bankruptcy, essentially. And so as we look and evaluate capabilities, particularly when we start to look at unmanned systems or even some of the networks that enable them, we think a lot about that. You know, that sort of high-end and survivable, okay, you could potentially pay a lot for that. Or it's got to be low-end, lower-end, and attritable. If you get caught in the middle, that's just bankruptcy. We can't afford it. So my boss on the SOCOM side, Admiral Bradley, we had a commander's conference a couple weeks ago, and he shared what he feels are sort of a distillation, 3 points that kind of capture the changing character of war. And I found him to kind of be pretty insightful. And this is from a guy, who's got a ton of recent experience as previously the JSOC commander for several years, doing a lot of targeting and fires in multiple theaters. And he has a really good perspective on this. And he shared kind of his distillation. He came it down to kind of 3 points. He said, number one, changing character of war. The point number one was the ubiquitous information environment. And he talked about just the fact that there is so much information available that the challenge is being able to harness all that information and be able to make a coherent picture about it. Number two, the adaptation cycle. He talked about, we've heard multiple kind of iterations of this. Our Ukrainian partner kind of shared the same. And he shared what he really felt was, at this current moment, about a 6-week adaptation cycle where you've got about 2 weeks where your technology is working pretty well, your new kind of revision that you've made. You've got about 2 weeks where you can see your adversary beginning to adapt to it, and then you've got about 2 weeks to come up with your new one before they've got it really solved and it's now somewhat obsolete. And the third thing he talked about was that the conventional targeting approach is now inadequate. He really took those combinations of those things, that ubiquitous information environment, the ability to take the combination of publicly available information, commercially available information, think about commercial ELINT, SIGINT, ad tech data, be able to combine all those things with our exquisite national technical means, et cetera. You've got to be able to do that really high-end correlation of ints from the very high level all the way down to harnessing all that is available around us. You also have to be able to do that at a scale. So he kind of combined that, in his words, if you've heard sort of like the JIC in Europe, which does sort of lower tempo, deeper target enabling, taking a whole host of the most exquisite ints all the way down to what's available all around us. You've got to be able to combine that with a scale that is the assault raker model, where we're trying to hold 1,000 targets, kind of target quality data on 1,000 targets simultaneously. And then you've got to apply that to a decision-making machine that can actually execute at that kind of speed. And I don't know that that exists anywhere all in one place right now. That combination of like a JIC high-end targeting, that combination of the ability to hold thousands of targets at risk at the exact same time, and then the ability to make decisions at machine speed in order to prosecute simultaneously. And he kind of laid that out for SOCOM as his distillation in 3 bullets of the changing character of war, and then asked the question to us, so how are we, SOCOM, going to help transform the American way of war? If that's kind of the high-end challenge, how are we going to help get after this? Now, that was a great question. I didn't have a good answer for how we specifically, SOCPAC, we're going to help get after that. I did have some thoughts, though, on what does our unique environment out here and the multitude of adversaries that we face, what opportunities does it provide us? And then what models are out there for how we should possibly look at this? Some of those models are exactly as you spoke. I think the high-end JIC, where you've got access to the most exquisite intelligence and the ability to combine that all the way down with, a robust, OSINT and CAI, PAI combination, and then you've obviously got to have some pretty robust AI to help make a coherent picture out of all of that and be able to do that at speed. I think there's absolutely application there. I think there's a great example. If we look at recently, we look at the Houthis, to be honest, at the example they've set. One of our goals here is to provide the joint force with a world-leading, world's best, non-traditional sea denial capability. There's a whole bunch that goes into non-traditional sea denial. There's obviously the obvious effector part. You want to be able to have, strike or effects to include non-kinetics at really long range. But in order to do that, you've got to have the domain awareness to know what's out there and to be able to target it. And then you've got to have what we kind of think about as sort of the oxygen of the fight out here, which is the ability to disrupt the adversary's ability to target you. That's Admiral Paro's #1 priority out here, which is counter C5 ISR. Because if you can't disrupt the adversary's ability to target you, to see you, then you're not survivable. And so back to this, humans are more important than hardware. Those human beings that you're depending on to drive a lot of that targeting or get those effectors in place, you're going to lose those human beings. So survivability equals lethality. So in our goal to be the world's best in non-traditional sea denial, it starts with being able to affect the adversary's ability to kill us so we are more survivable, and then to see, sense, understand where that adversary is. And that's not just in the maritime domain, that's in multiple domains, as they do the same thing we are. They're looking to combine multiple effects across multiple domains in order to dazzle, degrade, disrupt our ability to target them. If you look at models, the Houthis, for us are a good one. Somewhat low tech, obviously enabled by others, but able to, while we could say, from a quantifiable, how much effect did they have? Perhaps their effect in terms of destroyed ships, et cetera, was not high, but their ability to affect the sea and to agree to sea denial was pretty high for what they were actually doing and the volume and the capability. Another great one is obviously the Ukrainians. Something the Ukrainian soft commander said there during that forum was, if you look at what we've been able to do, we were able to deny large portions of the Black Sea with no navy. We've been able to deny our adversary, Russia, with air superiority with no air force. We've been able to hold a line with increasingly less army, less force. And they've been able to do that through a combination of the ability to see and sense and understand at distance, obviously with some help from partners, and then to be able to affect that with predominantly unmanned systems and the combination of, to the point now where they're putting surface-to-air missiles on unmanned surface vessels that have reconnaissance capabilities that go out for them to basically assess the electromagnetic spectrum, assess the EMI, make like real-time changes to the frequencies they're operating on in order to go and execute in that environment. And it's pretty amazing and provides a great example for us. So why haven't we done this already? This Houthis been at it for a while. Ukrainians have been at it for a while. What is our problem? Why are we so slow? Why has it taken us so long? I think #1 is the lack of a tactical imperative. I go back to the Syrian Democratic Forces example. When you're dying, you come up with solutions pretty fast, whether it's an advanced technology solution or a herd of sheep or a bulldozer, or in our case, you start pumping out weird vehicles, with VHULs when IEDs start hitting you. You start developing solutions when there's a tactical imperative. And I do firmly believe that the fact that we're not physically dying on the battlefield is the single biggest reason, not the defense industrial base. Certainly there's issues. I don't know, that's not my job. My job is to help try to communicate the tactical imperative out here. But the fact that we're not dying and not dying in large numbers, that is number one. Because I do believe this machine, which includes all of you and us, can move incredibly fast when there is that imperative. But without it, we tend to, knowingly or unknowingly, we tend to pace ourselves. And we tend to potentially prioritize other priorities, whether it's, cost or longevity. We prioritize other things over just immediate result. So that's number one. Second, I think we're creatures of habit. We in our command in SOCPAC right now, this week we're running our first AI boot camp. So we directed to all our directors and deputy directors that for 4 days this week, for the first half of the day from 8 to noon, we're doing an AI boot camp. And we brought in some quantum computing experts to teach us. Now we brought in, I think they're real experts. They sounded pretty smart that we're doing it. We have some great mission partners, actually. And we have access and have had access to some incredible large language models on all of our enclaves, TS, secret, down to unclass. However, our use of those systems, and Aproparo has directed in an order, we are going to be an AI-enabled command. That's not like an option whether we want to choose to adopt it or not. Here's my CTO baller right here, who's constantly nags me about this stuff. So we're running our first AI boot camp. And I think the reasons why AI adoption has been difficult for us is because we're creatures of habit. One, a lot of us have been at this for 20 or 30 years. You've developed kind of workflows and processes, and we fear change. We don't want to do something differently. It seems inefficient at first. At first, potentially, we don't even trust it. We don't trust the results. I think that's a big reason. And the second one, I think is equally as big, if not bigger, is that we don't know how. We don't know how to do the new thing. And this is where I see, we talk a lot about the relationship between the force and industry, and this is where I do believe that there is massive opportunity. And even as I look just at our boot camp, we had folks bring in additional expertise to come help provide this instruction, and they're excited to do it. Because when people have learned something that's making a big difference in their life or in their work, they are excited to share it with somebody else. And I am very much hoping that that same contagion, that excitement to share a new thing learned, is going to infect our directors and deputy directors, and that it's going to be a bit of a catalyst within our headquarters, that we begin to grow and kind of metastasize the AI usage, because it's some incredibly powerful tools there. So what are some of the most important technologies that we SOCPAC are thinking about right now? You've probably picked up a lot of them just in this talk. Certainly artificial intelligence and the use of it. Not to become the decision maker for us, but to aid in our decision making. We see huge potential there. In fact, everything I've set up to this point was generated by an AI agent, my little agent that I created. That's not true, because this would have been much better and much better organized. So the use of AI, absolutely, because we see the combination of robotics, autonomy, and then the network that enables us to see to those. And I use C2, with a little bit of the fingers here, because we have full realization that C2 in kind of the old days where we're calling it all the way, till the second, we're going to shift cold at the last second. That's just not going to be possible in the environment, the operational environment we're going to operate in. But the combination of those three things, robotics, autonomy, and resilient networks, we think are absolutely critical for us. And as I mentioned, the ability to disrupt our adversaries' ability to target us. That is the oxygen that we require to operate in this theater. I read a great article, I think it was last week. It was by Ty Graham and Peter Singer. It was on China's Transparent Ocean Project, the Blue Ocean Information Network. And it was pretty insightful in that, they've taken a very deliberate approach to maritime domain awareness in particular, for obvious reasons. And the investment that they've made from the seabed to space is really impressive to to try to create sensors essentially that can sense from the hardest environments we could possibly think of to operate in, from the very sea floor and deep ocean all the way up to space. And then the really important part, and this comes to kind of the work that Mike Smith does here as the Indo-PACOM J6, is all that information you gather, it's great, but it's meaningless if you can't transport it to somewhere where you can then make a coherent picture out of it. And that for us, robotics and autonomy, the combination, absolutely super important. But if we can't understand what's going on and have ability to make a coherent picture out of that information, which does require a resilient network, then it will be ultimately meaningless, or you will have just disparate elements that are operating without awareness of their job within the bigger picture. So, kind of wrap up this talk, I think I was talking with Jeremiah Hurley, who I'd served with here previously. As we think here about our role as SOCPAC, we are a supporting element to the joint force. And what we want to do is be able to help solve our boss's biggest problems. And many of those problems come down to our ability to use our placement and access in pieces of terrain in order to provide those counter C5 ISR effects and then to affect the adversary, much of which does happen in the maritime domain. I do not believe that we are in a state now, kind of in the changing character of war, where defense has now defeated the offense, per se. I think there is absolutely opportunity for us, SOF in particular, as we have unique placement and accesses with partners all over the place and in multiple domains to help the joint force seize the initiative. And to seize the initiative, you've got to be able to see a little bit deeper than your adversary, and then you've got to be able to act within their OODA loop, if you will. And I think this combination of technologies with our unique placement and access and partnerships, which remain central for us, provides us an opportunity to provide really initiative to the joint force, both through information and through effects. And we're working hard to deliver it here, and look forward to working with you to do that more in the future. So with that, I guess I can take a couple questions or comments. If you understand quantum computing and you have a detailed understanding of it, you could explain that to me once we're complete here. All right.
Thank you. So the audience does have some questions for you this morning. To start with, how does SOCPAC structure its engagement with non-traditional defense firms, for example, startups or dual-use industry, to rapidly prototype and field capabilities? And how do you measure success in that domain?
That's a great question. Honestly, it was one of my big questions coming into SOCPAC. SOCPAC is a theater special operations command, so the one thing that we don't own is the train, man, and equip functions, or the force generation and material generation. Big SOCOM does that. What I have found, though, a pleasant surprise, is that we do have a good amount of ability to affect what SOCOM is developing. But that's the mechanism by which we do it. We don't have a we don't have a SOF AT&L or equivalent, or a developments directorate within SOCPAC. What we do is we advocate with SOCOM and with Indo-PACOM for those capabilities that we think should be developed and delivered out here. What we do have is we've got incredible exposure to the operational environment, which I think provides a unique perspective to Indo-PACOM and to SOCOM. We have fortunately, high prioritization of this theater. And so when we provide feedback to SOCOM through the requirements validation process, that feedback is taken really seriously, because this is the #1 theater, the pacing theater for the national, Secretary of War and for our national defense. So I think while we lack the ability to do that in-house, we've got great partners at SOCOM, And we are absolutely open, and we have people in all the time. You know, Bala does a great job as our CTO of kind of helping vet, you know, folks that are coming in. But we meet with companies all the time. We've got a ton of opportunities forward through operations, exercises, experiments to take your stuff and test it in the operational environment that we would use it in. And that's kind of how we go about it.
Thank you, sir. Next question. You mentioned SOCPAC's technology priorities and our robotics, autonomy, and networks. Where do sensors and data fit in?
Yeah, we talk about robotics. I put a lot of the sensors that we operate with in that category. As much of what we intend to do is unmanned, or a lot of the intelligence collection initiatives that we are doing are either increase in unmanned sensors that can operate out in domains where the Joint Force does not currently have persistent presence, and the use of publicly available or commercially available data. You know, some call it digital ISR or next generation ISR. Because I think if you think about our support to the Joint Force from a targeting perspective, we anticipate out here doing less of the targeting as SOF ourselves, and more of the informing the Joint Force from a targeting perspective. So either providing the data necessary to produce a target quality track on a vessel or an object in land, sea, or air, or being able to project low-cost effectors that make joint weapons more survivable, or affecting the adversary's ability to defend themselves via counter C5 ISR capability, and much of our value comes in the proximity of that capability. So I think we think a ton about sensors, and we think about it a lot of times in the same conversation as when we're talking about robotics and network, as you have to have a means to get that data back to where you can make sense of it.
Thank you, sir. We have time for one more question. In a time with increased competition for funds, one of SOF's core missions is strategic recon and foreign partnerships. Should SOCOM and SOCPAC increase their investments in ITAR-approved cyber and electronic warfare recon tools, tactics, and training?
Oh, that's like a detailed technical question there. I would say, it's hard to say whether we should increase relative to the other things we're spending on. You know, we have some phenomenal mission partners from across the Joint Force that are doing a lot of the same. I talk particularly in the cyber realm. Any partner you go to now, doesn't matter where it is. Doesn't matter if it's Japan, Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand. Most are interested in a few of the same things. A lot of them are the same things we're interested in. Combination of robotics and autonomy, really tactical mission networks and the ability to move that data, to have access to it, to make decisions. And then how do you protect those networks? And how do you protect not just those tactical networks, but your critical infrastructure from a cyber perspective? You know, we have some of the best soft space cyber partnerships out here that I have seen. The ability to combine those three elements. Oftentimes it's soft, placement and access with a partner that allows for a cyber access or a space access. But I don't know that necessarily we SOF alone are going to provide a ton of difference-making capability absent those partnerships. And so I think any increased investment from a SOF perspective would really be done in conjunction with other elements of the Joint Force, is those are really kind of our primary mission partners for particularly cyber and space effects. I don't know if that answers the question or not. Probably not.
Thank you, sir. That was our final question. Please welcome Captain Ray Cross, U.S. Navy retired, AFCEA International's Vice President for Intelligence, to the stage.
All right, sir. Thank you. Sir?
General VanAntwerp, can I call you back to the stage for a moment, sir? Just want to thank you again for those insightful remarks. I think we all leave here today encouraged and enthused to support your vision. It's clear you have passion not only for the mission and your people, but we're all here to help you deliver on that AI-enabled future. Thank you very much. On behalf of AFCEA, I'd like to present that 40th anniversary TechNet coin. And then also, for all of our speakers, we will be making a contribution to the Friends of the Windward Wounded Warriors on your behalf. So
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Major General VanAntwerp, for that insightful presentation. And I have a few admin remarks before we conclude this event. There's going to be a keynote presentation by General Ronald Clark, Commander of the U.S. Pacific Army, here in Ballroom 3 at 12:30 today. And this afternoon we have 3 very informative innovation showcase discussions in room 307, Alpha Bravo. And please refer to the TechNet 2025 app for details on those. And then at 3:15, there will be a J2 panel on the evolving Indo-Pacific security environment, moderated by Brigadier General David Elson here in Ballroom 3. And until 5 p.m. today, Worldwide Technology will be providing parking validation at booth 1307 on the exhibit floor. Thank you.